All right. What's going on, everyone? Tom Martin here, financial planner and college expert here at Valark Financial Services. I want to thank everyone that attended the guidance symposium in person last night or yesterday. It was a really great event. My first time being there. It was wonderful to meet you all. For those of you that couldn't make it, we did miss you. The overall arcing theme across all the presenters, and we didn't orchestrate it this way or anything like that, was really thanking you guys and appreciating and acknowledging the work that you do. And that we know that you're stretched thin and that you need the resources and support to help these kids go to college and not get taken to the cleaners in the process. So I received a lot of good positive feedback regarding my presentation, my talk on the 5 biggest financial mistakes that college-bound families make. A lot of you wanted the slide deck of this. If that's you, feel free, email me. I'll send you a copy of the slide deck there. Some of you wanted to know if there would be a recording. That's why I'm recording this now for you. And for those of you who couldn't make it, at least I can provide you my talk on it all, and you can enjoy that at least. So feel free, jump around this presentation as you feel fit, depending on what your knowledge and expertise is around the whole FAFSA, the EFC calculation and all that stuff. Although I do feel that many of you might want to watch this start to end because there is a lot of data-rich points in here. I've done a lot of research in some of these topics here, and a lot of them were experienced through my practice and working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of family each year. Keep in mind, we get like about 100 parents that come through from each school that we talk to, and we offer complimentary meetings to them. So we get to talk to thousands of people a year regarding college planning and the finances of it all. So I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your honest feedback on it all. So let me share my screen here for you guys, and we'll get started into this. All right. And I'm just going to turn off my video so that I don't pay attention to myself here. And we can just enjoy the presentation here. All right. So this is the 5 biggest mistakes that college-bound families are making. This is what I'm experiencing in my practice through thousands and thousands of Connecticut-based families out here. Again, before we get in here, I just want to share a little bit about myself and my firm. Since 2016, I've devoted my career to helping college-bound families make smarter decisions around college and student loans. I do view the decisions made or not made around college as the biggest risk to parents running out of money in retirement, and also their kids not being able to live to their fullest potential. My work and advice has been featured all over the place, a lot of reputable places there. Jim Cramer's The Street, Business.com, Business Insider, Discover, NerdWallet, and all that. I've spoken at various different high schools across Connecticut, and I've been invited to speak to graduates at Yale School of Law, Yale School of Medicine, School of Business, Yale School of Forestry. That's a nice thing. I've also spoken to financial institutions trying to teach other financial advisors how to work with college-bound families. I know that I cannot do this all alone. I know that. That's why I'm thankful to be here with Valark and Charles Wareham here, who's also been doing college planning his entire life as well. So I need their help, and I need yours as well. So here's what I do really quickly. I employ a goal-based wealth management process for financial planning and investment management. That's my specialty here. Yes, I do advise, I do work with clients in the whole college planning side of things, including grad school, like med school, law school, business school, anything to do with those big grad school loans out there. I also provide student loan analysis to professionals out there. For those in the public interest work, I do help them and crunch their student loans to help them maximize public service loan forgiveness or forgiveness through an income-driven repayment plan. I have a lot of specialized tools and financial analyst software to kind of do that, in addition to all the other comprehensive financial planning stuff that I do. In my spare time, I serve as the board member for the Cheshire Education Foundation. I oversee applications to various private scholarships. We manage about $2 million in various different scholarships in our town alone. And I get to be part of that process and review and approve and select winners for these scholarships. And it's a pretty it's a very fulfilling process. I do enjoy my time working with them. Also, what's pretty cool about the Cheshire Education Foundation is that we accept mini grant requests from teachers in the Cheshire public school system. We've developed well, we can improve various different projects that they're working on. We had recent requests for stethoscopes and other health instruments out there. We've even built a lab for one of our elementary schools, I believe it was, or middle schools. And that was so that teachers wouldn't have to break down the whole science lab every single day for various different classes. So the lab can just stay up and running all time. So, little disclosure here. Everything that we're going to be talking about is for educational purposes only. It's not meant to be construed as personal advice for you, your family, your students. So please have them contact their tax, legal, and or financial advisor. And if they're not working with a financial advisor, I will pick up the phone and I will take their calls. I will answer their questions, and I will not even request a single dollar from them. My ultimate goal, my mission for my life is really to create an ideal outcome for millions of students. So I speak to thousands and thousands of family on college, and some of them will reach out to me and schedule meetings. I have hundreds of those meetings a year, and a lot of them don't end up going anywhere. That's okay with me. I just want to help out the student. Yes, and yes, some do become clients. So again, overall theme here. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everyone that showed up in person. We appreciate and acknowledge the work that you guys do. High school students really need the guidance in making concrete and compound decisions there. And you guys really are there for them and help that. And I know that a lot of it comes as personal sacrifice for you. So thank you for the work that you do there. So big picture stuff here. College is expensive, right? It just is. So here on the left-hand side here, these are really the various different business models for college and universities, right? So in the top here, we have our Ivy League schools. Ivy League schools are going anywhere from 84 to 6 figures a year for 1 year of college. Ivy imitators, this is a new line here in my slide deck. So there are these Ivy imitators out there who act and have beautiful campus, just like the Ivy League schools, but they're not part of that Ivy League circle. And the big difference between some of these Ivy imitators is that they also offer need and merit-based aid for a lot of them, whereas Ivy League schools don't really offer merit-based aid because every single student is exceptional. So how could they possibly award merit-based aid, to these students? So these Ivy imitators out there, some of them really act like Ivy Leagues where they don't offer merit-based scholarships, and a lot of them do offer merit-based scholarships. So for some of our higher income families out there, some of these schools are a great way for those families to get need and merit-based aid. All right, so next up here, we have our private four-year colleges here. Universities, they start about $54,000 a year, although Quinnipiac University here in Yukon is about $67,000 a year. So they're really ratcheting up there. Next, we have our public schools, right? We have our out-of-state public schools, which start their business model is really to charge 2 to 3 times tuition. So they start around $40,000 to $45,000 a year for 1 year. And then our in-state public schools are about just under $30,000 a year, although we have Yukon, which is the mid to high 40s. So that's good to note here. So one of the key things here is understanding how these various different business models award financial aid, because that's very important. And I feel that a lot of parents don't really know what they're applying to. And that leads us into our presentation here, the 5 biggest financial mistakes college-bound families make and how school counselors can guide them to success. So the first mistake here, parents don't understand the basics of financial aid. All right. So this is a very big one, I feel. Although I am mentioning it as the first one here, I find that parents don't know anything about what an expected family contribution is, what the cost of attendance is, and how it's a sticker price and not really the real price. And they don't know the difference between need-based aid or merit-based aid or how to get that. If they did, they probably would be planning earlier for college, like 8th or ninth grade. Because as you guys know, all 4 years of scholarship is based on that base year, right? The prior tax year. So if they actually knew how these financial decisions they were making would impact that expected family contribution, I don't think they would be doing some of the financial moves that they are doing in these years that are really hosing them up for financial aid. So what I want to do is just give you a little crash course. So of the guidance counselors that I polled at the guidance symposium, they probably about a good half of them said that they understood the financial component um, of college selection just as much as the academic. So I want to dive some stuff in here because I'm not really sure that's really accurate, but perhaps they do. But I think what was settled was that some counselors do speak to the finances of college and some don't. So it's not universal across the board. So the expected family contribution is a big number. It is a very important number in the college journey. It affects all 4 years of financial aid, right? Wrong moves in those base years can negatively impact the EFC. And given a little bit of time and know-how, the EFC can be lowered. And just to give you an example here, in 2020, I signed up for a few courses through an online university, and I was been working on my EFC because my son's in ninth grade this year, so I'm trying to really do some tests with my own finances. And fortunately, my wife is a small business owner and I'm a small business owner, so we can control our income. So I manipulated my income and I got my EFC to zero, despite having, I think it was at the time, $100,000 in the bank account and some non-retirement investments. So I probably had like another 200,000 or something like that, non-retirement investments. And, but by controlling my EFC, I was able to get a zero. So really my assets really didn't impact me that much at all, obviously, right? So moving on here. So every year, Sally Mae runs these How to Pay for America or How America Pays for College reports. I've been reading these things since 2015. I'm just a nerd like that. I love reading these things, especially it kills my wife because I'll read these things in the middle of like a family event and it just drives her crazy. All right. So anyways, Sally Mae produces this How America Pays for College report. And what's interesting is that since I've been reading these things for several years now, I've seen these numbers shift over time. So that's very interesting. So what we know today is that 45% of Americans, parents, or college is being paid for through parent income and savings. That's 45%. 25% of college is being paid for through scholarships and grants, 20 through loans, 8 through student savings and income, and 2% through relatives and friends. Now, what we know is that 25% or a quarter of college is being paid for through scholarships and grants. Of all the gift aid money, the money that doesn't have to be paid back, that gets awarded out, 85% of it comes from the school itself. So that alone right there is like, okay, 25% of college is being paid for by the schools itself. And because of this EFC. So it makes sense that if we can adjust the EFC to our advantage, it would be very beneficial. It's a quarter of the cost of college. We know that private scholarships here account for 15% of that gift aid money, and private scholarships have to be reported to the colleges and they will lower need-based aid. And a lot of times parents just accept that. But what they don't know is that you can, through the appeals process, reach out to the school and say, hey, listen, I know that our gift aid is going to be lowered because of private scholarships. Is there any chance that you can lower any kind of need-based work study or need-based loans instead of the free money? And sometimes they will say yes. But if you don't ask, it's always going to be a no, right? All right. So over the years, so let's take a look at the 2018-19 academic year. Back then, 31% of college was being paid for through scholarships and grants, whereas today it's 25%, right? 30% was being paid for through parent savings and income, whereas today it's 45%. So what we can see here is that as the cost of college increases, the parents become more and more responsible to fill that gap. So maybe the colleges are not exceeding a certain threshold in scholarships and grants. That makes sense, right? They have a certain endowment per student, and they have to adhere to that. Also, you know, especially probably as the FAFSA Simplification Act comes around here in the next year or two, we're going to see more and more lower income families coming to the table to college because the FAFSA will be so much easier to fill out. And I can't wait to see this chart. Then I bet you this is going to be around 55% coming from parent income. And we're going to see a lot of scholarships being lowered because essentially the FAFSA Simplification Act is going to make college more expensive. And I'll dive that here in a little bit. So what we also know is that more and more families have a plan to pay for college today, even though that plan can possibly be to pay off college with student loans or debt. But it is up 58% from just a couple of years ago from 44%. Now, what's interesting about this is that only 38% of families have even started to discuss that first year salary of the student and how it plays into everything, where I think that is the most important thing here. I always say that no student should take out more in student loans than their first year salary. That would create the ideal outcome where the student loans can be paid off in 10 years or less. So 58% people say they have a plan. I'm going to say only 38% do, because only 38% of them are actually taking into consideration the student's first year salary and ability to pay back those loans. More and more families are skipping the FAFSA. It's going down and down and down every year. It was at 77% in 2018-2019 academic year. It's now 68%. And 44% of families believe that they would not qualify for financial aid, and that's why they didn't apply. Now, I work with families that have or make $200,000 of adjusted gross income, and they still qualify for need-based aid and merit-based aid. It's all about matching your student up to the right school. And this is a big mistake. That's almost half of parents aren't filling out the FAFSA. It's crazy. 34% said that they missed the application deadline. They found the application too daunting or whatever, just maybe they didn't have enough time. And I think it's a little bit more of they didn't have enough time. So what that means is that they're waiting until the last possible minute. They realize that the questions are more in depth than they really know, right? They're going to have to dig for some of these answers, and so they never fill it out. All right, so here's a crash course in financial aid. All right, so how much colleges think you can afford is driven by what's called the free application for federal student aid, right? The FAFSA. Now, the FAFSA becomes available on October 1st. Me and my clients are applying and filling that out and submitting it on November 1st, which is when you can submit it. That application and all that data gets fed into what's called the federal formula, and that will spit out your federal EFC. So that's your EFC for public schools. So there are more than one EFC. There's a public school EFC, there's your private school and consensus schools, your Ivies. So let's take a look at what these colleges and what these formulas are taking a look at that are really coming up with this price tag. They're looking at four basic things here. They're looking at parent assets, they're looking at student assets, they're looking at parent income, and they're looking at student income. With parent assets, they're going to assess up to 5.64 of all parent assets. They're going to take a look at the student assets, and they're going to assess that at 20%. Now, if you ever heard the term, don't put money in your kid's name, this is where it comes from. Parent income is one of the largest drivers of the EFC, and it's assessed up to 47%, right? So a lot of how much college costs is due to parent income, which is why it was beneficial for me and my wife to be self-employed and be able to control that income and divert it away from our tax returns. And I got a 0 EFC for doing so. Student income is assessed up to 50%, right? There is a little bit of allowance here, $6,600. But after that, they're getting hit with by 50% for every dollar after that. Now, when parents think of student income, they think of their son or daughter working at the ice cream shop, scooping ice cream. Maybe they make $6,000 a year doing that. But what's really student income is ordinary income. So if grandma and grandpa have an investment account in a kid's name, or bank accounts in the kids' names, UGMA accounts, UTMA accounts, non-retirement orientated investments, and they start liquidating those investments to help pay for college and sending mom and dad a check, well, that's going to be income, right? Those capital gains are going to get added in there too. All right, so what's assessable and what's not? What's assessable is everything on the left here: cash, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, your 529 savings, Coverdell education savings plans, any kind of equity in investment properties and vacation properties will be accessible on the FAFSA. What's not accessible is your retirement accounts, your 401ks, your 403bs, your 457 plans, your Roth IRAs, your traditional IRAs, pensions, annuities, cash value life insurance, home equity, small businesses. So here's where I'll go on a rant here again. Pensions, annuities, cash value life insurances. A lot of financial advisors or insurance people will come into schools to try to discuss how to pay for college their way. And they'll say that, hey, mom, dad, if you have $100,000 in your bank account, colleges are going to take that from you. So dump it in this annuity, dump it in this life insurance, and it'll be off the table and you can have that later on down the line. It doesn't work out as planned. We'll see here in just a little bit on how that works out. But for the most parts, if you hear anybody saying that, that's not a good thing for parents. The reality is parents are going to need access to that money to pay for college. So we don't want to lock it up in here. If we put it in annuities or life insurance, we're locking it up until age 59 and a half. Otherwise, we're going to get tax penalized and all that stuff. And parents are going to need that money. All right, so let's take a look at a calculation of the EFC. This is a little bit older, but it's still relevant. So let's take a look at mom and dad. Their family for mom and dad make $200,000 a year after retirement savings and some minor deductions. Their adjusted gross income is about $150,000 a year. If they have two kids, colleges are going to think they're going to be able to afford $32,000 a year. I don't know one family that makes $150,000 a year that thinks that that's exactly what they could afford for college, right? $32,000 a year. So this is a great kind of eye opener for a lot of families. All right, so we talked about the FAFSA, right, which ran the federal formula and spit out that public school EFC, that federal EFC. Now we're going to take a look at the CSS profile, or the College Scholastic Search profile. And that's going to run what's called the institutional formula. So it's going to have different assessable assets there, and they're going to ask about 50% more questions. It's going to take twice as long to fill out. But for some families, it can really create an ideal outcome for the student, because some of these schools really have a lot of money to give those students to attend, especially if that kid is marketable. I will also want to make your attention to the 568 Presidents Group. These are a lot of our amazing colleges throughout the country, some of the most expensive too. And they're also need blind schools. And what need blind schools says is, hey, if you have a kid that's gifted academically, we're going to let him in. We're going to figure out the finances later. All right. And for most of the time, those kids will get a free ride. So these are the schools here. They're some of the best and brightest schools that we have in this country. I know my cousin went to Cornell University, and she got a free ride there, and she's working in environmental studies right now and having the time of her life. So it's nice not being bogged down by those student loans. Okay, so some of the differences here, I'm not going to jump in this too much, but I do want to point out a few things for you. One, asset allowance. This is actually going away with the FAFSA Simplification Act. So right now, FAFSA does offer an asset protection allowance. So there's a certain threshold before assets start getting assessed. Whereas with private schools and Ivies, they don't, they'll assess it on the first dollar. Cash, stocks, bonds, mutual funds will get assessed at 5.64% at FAFSA schools, 5% at your Ivies and private schools. Small businesses here, doesn't matter if you don't have more than 100 employees for FAFSA schools, varies from school to school with private schools and consensus schools. Non-qualified annuities, this is what I was talking about, where some financial advisors or life insurance people will tell parents to dump money in that, and schools won't assess it. FAFSA schools won't look at these things, but your CSS profile schools and your consensus schools will at 5%. So if we're going to a private school here, they could have just kept that money in the bank and have it assessed at 5%. And instead, now they've locked up that money until age 59 and a half. The insurance guy got a big fat commission, and parents can't use this money for college unless they take out a loan out of those policies, which will end up doing such horrible things to those policies, and they'll start losing money pretty aggressively. Home equity here, FAFSA schools won't take a look at that. Varies from school to school with private schools. Consensus schools are very specific. What they say is, hey, we're going to take a look at 120% of your income. So if you make $100,000 a year, that's $120,000 worth of your equity in your house. So they'll take a look at up to $120,000 of equity in your house if you make $100,000 a year, and they're going to assess that at 5, 7, 10%, whatever they assess it at, and they're going to want that towards college this year. Assets in the student's name, 20% on the FAFSA, 25% private schools, 5% for consensus schools. And jumping down to here, non-custodial parent. So the custodial parent currently is the parent where the student resides at least 51% of the year, right? That's the custodial parent. That's the parent that's going to fill out the FAFSA. The non-custodial parent is the other parent, the other divorced family. So this is for divorced families. FAFSA schools are not going to take a look at that divorced family guy, whereas your private schools will vary from school to school how they'll assess that. Maybe they'll just assess dad if dad's remarried. Maybe they'll take a look at both of them too. Consensus school is definitely going to take a look at that. Now with the FAFSA Simplification Act that's coming out, what they're saying is they're going to flop it around. So right now the strategy is whoever's the least financially successful parent, that's who we want to fill out the FAFSA. Way it's going to change is whoever's the most financially successful parent is going to have to fill out the FAFSA. So that's going to drive up the cost of college there too. That could swing the EFC by tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, so mistake number 2 is that they don't set a budget for college. They make that very big mistake of saying, if you get in, we'll figure it out. Because when we go back to that grid and college is costing $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 for 1 year of college, if they get into one of those $65,000 a year, we'll just call it Quinnipiac. If they get into something like Quinnipiac University and they don't qualify for need-based aid or merit-based aid, that's $67,000 a year. It's going to be well over $200,000 a year to go to that school for that family. And I see it happen every year. So it does happen. So that is why we say, no, that's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is figure out how much all 4 years of college are going to cost, and also try to project how much need-based aid and merit-based aid you're going to get at each of these schools. So unfortunately, there is no college pre-approval process like there is with getting a mortgage. Students today can take out a mortgage worth of student loans. They could take up to the entire cost of attendance and drop that on a credit card and call it a day without any expectations of realistically being even able to pay that back, right? So what I've done is I put together this worksheet over years to help families get that 4-year pre-approval number. Let's take a look at an example here. So this is this sheet filled out here. Parent resources here. We're going to we're going to put whatever resources we have for our student. Let's call her Sophia. If we have $75,000 for Sophia in 529 savings, we're going to put that there. Other assets. Let's say I got gifted or I have $10,000 or $20,000 of investments myself that aren't retirement money. They're non-retirement money, so I could take them out whenever I want. Let's say I want to earmark $10,000 worth of those investments to my son or to Sophia. And what I would do is just put it here. I'm going to earmark that. Monthly cash flow. Obviously, it's not free for our kids to live with us. We have to feed them. We have to clothe them. We got to take them to this sport, that sport. And if we're paying for private scholarships to private schooling, then, we're going to put that in there too. An easy way for most families to do this is to get together and say, hey, listen, how much can we realistically save on a monthly basis for college for Sophia? I'm going to put $200 a month in my example here. And over the course of 4 years of college, that's $9,600. Now, if your kids are in junior or senior year, they might have an extra year of doing that, and that would boost us up a little bit more. Monthly American Opportunity Tax Credit. So we can get up to $10,000 in that. And how this works is this. What the American Opportunity Tax Credit says is if we spend $4,000 of our own money, we're going to get $2,500 back next year in our tax returns. Now, it does phase out. Families making over $180,000 of modified adjusted gross income will start to phase out of here. And I think one of the key points to note here is whether or not you qualify for this. If you do qualify for this, that money is just going to show up in your tax returns one year, and it's not for a vacation. All right, we got to pay this forward to college. So $2,500 a year. Over the course of 4 years in college, we're going to have $10,000, right? So I'm going to put that there. Add this up and we get $104,600 for parent resources. Parent loans. Now, this worksheet is a starting point, right? It's not necessarily where we end up unless we're leaving for college tomorrow, but sooner we get this worksheet out to these kids, the sooner we can fill this out and the sooner they can kind of start manipulating some things around. As a starting point, I always say 0 for parent loans. Now, is parent loans something that parents will use? Yeah, obviously, yeah, they will. It's not a smart thing though, because what parents don't realize is by the time their last kid graduates from college, they're going to be in their mid to late 50s and retirement's going to be right at their doorstep. And for most of them, it doesn't make sense to start a new mortgage and have those payments going into retirement. So 0 is what we're going to do here. Student resources. This is bank accounts, savings, all that stuff. Obviously, we said it's not smart to have money in the kids' names. If parents have money in the kids' names, then we're just going to put it down just so that we don't forget that money is there. And hopefully we can move it out of the kids' names and put it in the parents' names. Monthly work study or part-time jobs. So I know a lot of parents want their kids to focus on education and all that. But for some families, I think it's a great idea that these kids work. Let's say a kid works maybe on average throughout the year. Maybe they would just work through summer or something like that. On average, maybe that's about $200 a month. Over the course of college, 4 years, that's about $9,600. Now, we're going to see some trends here. $10,000 here, almost 10,000 there, 10,000 here, 10,000 there. The thing about student loans is this: for every $10,000 you take out in student loans, it's roughly about $100 a month in monthly repayment on a 10-year standard repayment plan. So by having $10,000 here, we save $100. Monthly cash flow, we're at $200. American Opportunity Tax Credits, that's $300. Student working part-time, that's $400. That's $400 a month that we just saved this kid in repayment by dedicating all these little resources to college. All right, jumping down to student loans, $27,000. That's the maximum we get for all 4 years of college. You get $55,000 in your first year, $6,500 in your second year, $7,500 in your third and fourth year, right? For a total of $27,000. That's all you get. Outside of that, we got to go to private student loans. We got to go to home equity loans. We got to do private personal loans, whatever it is. So since this is a starting point, we're going to say yes to the $27,000 in federal student loans for a number of reasons, and no to the private student loans because, again, this is a starting point. For parents that have good positive cash flow out there, colleges will note that they're not taking out any student loans, and they will understand that that student has resources and not give more aid than needed. So it's a good idea to take out student loans, even if it's just the subsidized loans, if we have those. Other help, we're talking about grandparent involvement here, family help, which consists of 2% of how college is being paid for today. I think it's a weird thing that in America, we have a hard time talking to our parents about our own finances. It's just stupid. With college, we can't make that mistake. Okay. If our grandparent or if our parents are making financial moves for our student behind our back, nothing knocks a kid out of financial aid quicker than grandparent involvement. So we need to reach out to our parents, have the discussion with them, say, we're planning for Sophia's college here. We just want to know if you plan on contributing anything or anything like that, because we're trying to figure out the whole financial aid side of things. And we don't want any unpleasant surprises if we find out that you have these accounts and they're knocking them out of financial aid. So in our example here, we're going to have grandparents. I have an extra zero here too. But $10,000 is what grandparents are going to give us in this example, $2,500 a year as a gift to our student. And what we do is we total everything up over here and we come to $150,600. That's our college pre-approval number. All right. Now our job as parents is to go out and find these schools that will cost that much with the federal student loans here accounted, and for all 4 years, right? So we need to find the schools that cost $150,000 for all 4 years with need-based aid, merit-based aid, all that stuff. That's our goal. And that is how a student can graduate, ideally, and with minimal student loan debt that can be paid off in 10 years or less. All right, so mistake number 3, they apply to schools that are the wrong financial fit. This is so true with everybody. I see even some of the some parents that have very successful kids that are academically gifted and stuff like that. They'll apply to all these big name schools, and their admission rate is like 15%. I'm like, okay, these are great schools, but all your schools are reach schools. I was like, what if you don't get in? What if you get waitlisted? You're going to be hosed. Your plans are going to be for nothing. And then you're going to scatter and start applying to schools that now you're applying late, so you won't get any financial aid. And it's a mess. So it's important that you as guidance counselors know that there are 4 types of financial aid families. In the top left here, these are high merit, low need families. So we have an academically gifted student, but we're also financially successful. And because we're financially successful, we sit on this bubble where we make too much money to qualify for financial aid, but we also can't write that check for 60-something thousand a year either. All right. In our bottom left here, we have low merit, low need families. So we have an average student here. Maybe they don't test too great. Our family is financially successful too. So now we possibly might not get any need-based aid or merit-based aid, at some of these schools. In our top right, we have high merit, high need families. These are academically gifted students and low-income families, as colleges consider them. And then in the bottom right here, we have low merit, high need. So we have an average student that is in a fairly low income household. And depending on the family type that you're consulting here at school, your strategy for these families are going to be very different. All right. So in the top left quadrant here are academically gifted, financially successful households. We need to find schools that will offer non-need merit aid. right? If we're not going to qualify for need-based aid, we need to find the ones that will offer merit-based aid. Now, keep in mind, our Ivies have gifted students that go there too, but they don't offer merit-based aid because everyone's academically gifted. So we need to find those, maybe go to those Ivy imitators, if that makes sense. We also should be applying to private scholarships. Now, private scholarships, like I mentioned before, they lower need-based merit, need-based aid. So they're not really detrimental here for these types of families. So we need to apply to as many of these private scholarships as possible and get this free money. We need to make the most of school selection here. All right. We need to invest in test prep to raise up our SAT and ACT scores so that we maximize merit-based aid. And I'll share here in a little bit too. For these test optional schools out there, it's the students that are submitting their test scores that are getting the lion's share of merit-based aid. We also need to do a little bit of financial planning, maybe shift some assets around, income around a little bit if we have that ability to, and help look as poor as possible for that base year. In our bottom left here, we have our academically, our students that are average academically, but they're also financially successful. These students need to make the most of school selection. They really need to run some of the reports that we have to find out where they can get the most aid because they have an average student and they have high income. So they're going to be a full price family if they don't apply to the right kind of school. And they need to invest in test prep to hopefully score some merit-based aid. And they need to do a little bit of financial planning too. In our top right, we have our high merit, high need family. So these are our academically gifted students, but they're also they also have somewhat low income. We need to find schools that meet 100% of need, right? There's a lot of schools out there that only meet a percentage, 50%, 60%, 80%. There's really not a lot of schools that meet 100% of need met. So if we're applying to schools that only meet 49% of need or 80% of need, then we're leaving a good amount of money on the table. So it's actually going to cost us more to go to these schools, and we're going to have to pay for that out of pocket or student loans. So we want to find the schools that meet at or near 100% of need. We also want merit aid, right? We have an academically gifted student, so we need to apply to a school that will offer the merit aid. We should invest in some private scholarships out there, ask them to lower the need-based work study, need-based loans, invest in test prep to maximize merit, and also explore ways to reduce the EFC here to go ahead and maximize that need with that family. And then in the bottom right here, we have our low merit, high need family. So these are our average students in low income households. They need to find these schools that meet 100% of need. They need to find ways to reduce their EFC further if they can, and they need to apply on time. If they apply on that November 1st or thereafter, then they kind of secure likelihood that they will receive some sort of merit-based aid or whatnot before the school just runs dry. So who are these low need families? These financially successful families? Are they the Waltons? Are they the Elon Musks? Are they the Bill Gates? They're not. So we put together this income hot zone to help families understand where they might fall. Our families that make $0 to $60,000 a year between mom and dad, they really don't need to do much. They're going to qualify for everything. They're going to get all the grants, all the scholarships. They're going to get the student loans here too, but they're going to get the subsidized versions here. And then the subsidized versions, those are the ones where the government pays the interest on those loans while the kid's in school and other periods of deferment. And that's very helpful because when kids graduate and they have these subsidized loans, they don't grow out of control. And it's really what they're expecting. They'll get some work studies and miscellaneous grants through the state as well. $60,000 through $120,000 a year. These families are really going to get a base package at a lot of these schools. So they're going to want to really dig through their finances a little bit, maybe invest in merit-based aid, do some things through school to show their interest in the school, and hopefully the colleges that they're applying to will like that. Families that are making $120,000 or more, they really need to focus on cash flow. Cash flow is huge with these families. Like I said, it's not free for our kids to stay there. And a lot of these families are investing in tutors, and they're playing various different sports, which cost a lot of money a year. We need to pay those expenses forward into college as well, not just stop it. They're also going to get the $5,500 in Stafford loans for the freshman year, although those will be mostly unsubsidized for a lot of these families. But they can go ahead and receive merit-based aid and scholarships. So what's important here to understand is that, depending on your income, your approach for college might be a little bit more focused if you know where you're going to go. If you know you're not going to get any need-based aid, let's go ahead and throw that out the window and not have to stress and worry out about that. Let's focus on merit-based stuff. Let's focus on their education. Maybe not play sports every single year. Maybe invest in some time into various different clubs at school and do things that route. Less than 1% of students that play sports actually see $1 at the collegiate level. So, and a lot of that makes a lot of families very angry because some of these parents are investing a lot of time and money and watching these games every week. I mean, it's hours and hours on end every single day. And if they're going from lacrosse to a basketball to baseball to football, then I feel that the kid could have invested their time a little bit better into things that can help them out with college. All right, so how's need-based aid calculated? Well, you probably know this already, but it's the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, and that equals your financial need. If you're looking at a school that's $50,000 a year and your expected family contribution is $20,000, then you have a $30,000 of need. Now, instead of going to that $50,000 school, if you are like, okay, my EFC is $20,000, I'm going to go to a cheap school at $20,000, so I don't have anything to do. Well, that doesn't really work out like that. In that situation here, you have $0 of need. So you're not going to get any money from this school that costs $20,000 when your EFC is $20,000. Where at this school, you could probably get a lot of merit-based aid and need-based aid at these schools. And it could have been equivalent, but it could have been a better education and experience overall at this school. Currently, EFC gets split when we have multiple children in school. So one kid is a junior in college and the younger kid comes in as a freshman. Our EFC currently gets split between those two students. So that instead of a $20,000 EFC, we have $10,000 of EFC for each student. And if we went to that same $50,000 school, and instead of our EFC being $20,000, it'd be $10,000, and we would have $40,000 of need that year, which would be great. Now, the FAFSA Simplification Act is going to remove this, and that too is going to make college more expensive, especially for families that have multiple kids. And a lot of families have multiple kids. And the families that have 3 or 4 kids, maybe the 3 kids are going to get hammered here. Maybe 2 of those kids are twins, and we have to pay the full price out of pocket for all 3. All right. Fourth mistake is that families don't set a limit on student loans. Now, I tried not to include this in my presentation because it's so, you guys expect it, right? On student loans, but there's just no way. The amount of student loans that I see get generated through planning with clients is absurd. So when I got into college planning at the end of 2015, I think, that's when I started seeing kids graduate, just everyday kids, not doctors, with 6 figures of student loans. Today, kids are graduating with $200,000. So that's crazy. So let's take a look at the state of student loan crisis that's out there today. 1.74 or 1.75 trillion, if you round it up, right? That's how much is owed in student loans today. That's nearly $3,000 a second, or $11 million an hour. All right. Student loans account for over 50% of government assets out there. So when a lot of people are talking about massive federal student loan discharges and stuff like that, I really don't see that likely because one, the government needs money, right? It needs revenue. And two, student loans accounts for over half of their assets. So I really don't see massive discharges of student loans happening. I do see a lot more people entering retirement with more and more debt, and that's a result of student loans, I believe. What we know is that 7 in 10 students graduate with student loans. So that means 70% of all students, 70% of your students will need student loans. The average, 41,000 just about with private student loans across the country. And again, for every 10,000 you owe, that's $100 a month. So if we take the average of $41,000, that's the average student graduates with a $410 monthly student loan payment. For those that choose maybe, or maybe didn't do a lot of savings and maybe they had to take out more student loans, maybe they graduate with $100,000 of student loans, those kids are going to have about $1,000 a month in monthly repayment. And those who absolutely went to the wrong school and didn't really have any planning are graduating with $200,000, which is $2,000 a month. So I shared a story at the Guidance Symposium, and that's a story of Sarah. Sarah's mom reached out to me after hearing about me through some counselors, and her daughter graduated from Quinnipiac University just a couple years ago, and she had a really great experience at the school. Everything that you can imagine as that's part of the college experience. She played sports and she had a great time there. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in marketing, and she owes about $237,000 in student loans. Now we know that 27,000 of that is federal student loans because that's the maximum you could take. So the rest of it, over 200,000, was private student loans. Her interest rate was 14.59%. She was working. Her take-home pay, I think, was about $3,000 a month, and her student loan payments were $2,600 a month. I was able to work with the family to get the loans refinanced because no one was accepting her as a refinance. So we had to really shift some assets around and income around with the family. But we did drop that down to a 7% interest rate through refinancing. They're not clients or anything like that. They're just families that I invested my time and money to help because they needed it. So anyways, my story there is that, student loans can get out of control without a plan and without a cap on how much we're going to take out. So what we know is that student loans is accelerating. At one point, it beat automotive loans and credit card loans combined. Today, they're pretty neck and neck between the two. So it is growing up pretty aggressively. I thought this was pretty interesting in my research for preparing for my talk, and that is that Black students are more likely to borrow for college. 49% or so have student loans, whereas white families have 30, and Hispanics 23, and Asians 18. And I was wondering why this was happening. Why are these students, particularly in lower income families, taking on so much debt? And then it just clicked with me. So this is another report this is an Education Pays report. And what we can see here is that there is a correlation between income and degree, and as well as overall lifetime satisfaction. All right. So what these families are seeing is that if we get these degrees, if we get a master's degree, we're going to make $80,000 a year, right? If we get a bachelor's degree, we're going to make $65,000 a year. If we get a doctoral degree, 102. If we get a professional degree like a PhD, we're going to get $120,000 a year. And if we just stay at the high school level, we're going to get 40,000 or 46,000 if we don't complete college. So I think what these lower income families are saying here is, you know, the lion's share of money, you know, those making over $100,000 a year, 43% of them have an advanced degree. Of those making over $100,000 a year, 28% of people have a bachelor's degree, right? Whereas if we look to these light blue sections now, this is really those living at poverty level, right? Only making $40,000 max a year. 27% of them have an associate's degree. 32 have some college, but no degree. And high school diplomas are 40%. So 40% of people that don't have a degree are living at poverty. And I think that they see that debt is their way to these higher overall incomes and higher satisfaction in life. Now, I will say that I had joined, I had another financial advisor at a different firm ask me to speak with one of their clients. And this woman, she was in her 40s, I believe. She was still in school because, you know, she's trying to reach to these income levels here. So she has student loans. She has twins going to college, and she plans on taking student loans out because she has nothing saved. And then she has what got me here was that she has a sixth grader that she's sending to private pre-K in Hamden. And I'm like, my God, why is this woman taking out all this debt? Because I mean, she really didn't make that much money. And now it's just come to click that she's going after these higher incomes. She's almost putting herself on a cross so that her kids can have, you know, an overall better life through this. Now, I will say that I have read research reports on this and recently, and that some of the writers of these various different topics was sharing that, you know, this might have been effective maybe 50, 40, 30 years ago. But today, with as high as college costs and kids graduating with $100,000 or $200,000 per, I really don't know if that's a sound strategy for a lot of these lower income families. All right, so how much is too much? So I talk a lot about creating an ideal outcome for the student. And what that is going to a 4-year degree program, graduating in 4 years, and with minimal student loans that can be paid off in 10 years or less. That is the ideal outcome for me. Yes, we have students that graduate debt-free. We do. But it's not as frequent as having minimal student loan debt. And I think that for a student to have minimal student loan debt and be debt-free by the time they hit their 30s, their early 30s, is pretty ideal. It's much better than going into retirement with those student loans. And it's definitely much better than having to pay back those student loans and send your own kid to college. So how we do this is by limiting undergraduate loans. Okay. With grad loans, you know, our doctors out there, our attorneys, you know, people that were working in private sector, public sector, you know, with these grad plus loans, they're federal student loans. So for those that are working in the public interest environment, they can get loans discharged through public service loan forgiveness. And for those not working in it, and they're in the private practice, be it a private practice attorney or private practice dentist, or, you know, just someone that's working behind a desk, you know, they can get forgiveness through an income-driven repayment plan. Yes, it is a taxable discharge of those student loans, but still, they have a plan. Those loans will disappear eventually. Private student loans, they will stay around forever. You can't bankrupt out of them. You have too much of them, you can't even refinance. Nobody wants them. So it's a great deal for these lenders, but it's not a great deal for our students. So if we go to salary.com, we can find entry, the median salary for a lot of these positions. So this is something that families can do on their own. If our daughter is looking to be an entry level teacher here in Connecticut, the median is going to be about 49,000, so $50,000. So again, we don't want to take out more in student loans than our first year salary. And again, only 38% of families are even mentioning first year salary in their college planning discussions. If our son wanted to be an entry level financial analyst, we're expecting about $61,000 of income. Don't take out more in student loans than that. For lawyers out there, which is a little bit more complicated because lawyers is a very complex career. It's one of the only careers out there where we have some of the highest paying people in the country, and also some of the lowest paying people in the country, and that's the difference between being a public defender and being in corporate law. So what we want to do is just take in consideration of first year salary and make sure our student loans are in conjunction with that. If we plan on getting, there's a little side talk that we can have if we're going to be in public interest in having student loans discharged. But again, that's graduate level, right? We're not going to get forgiveness through these private student loans with undergraduate studies. So we got to be very careful there. So going back to our college pre-approval worksheet here, I have some baked in starting salaries here, which I keep those updated every so often. But, we have a blank section here for parents to fill out their stuff here. So again, starting salary equals max loan. All right. So if our job here is to find schools that are $150,000 or less, $27,000 of that is the federal student loan. So we only have maybe another $27,000 in additional loans before we cap out on student loans at $58,000 for this degree in business, right? So if our pre-approval is 150, that includes 27. So max. So we're looking for schools that are 150 in this case, so 150,000 to maximum 170, right? To stay within that max student loans. And I think that's doable for this particular scenario. Last mistake here, they are starting to deprioritize SAT and ACT. This has been brought around since COVID with all this test optional schooling there. So here's a story that I got for you. So a couple of weeks ago, before I did this presentation, I was asked to speak at the guidance symposium. And I shared the story with my wife, and she shared the story with my nieces and nephews, who are actually, some of them graduated from college recently, and there's like 2 or 3 that are still in college, just wrapping things up. And they said, my nieces and nephews, that, you know what, SATs and SAT scores are really not going to matter anymore. They're going away. And I've never heard this before. So this was kind of new to me. I was like, what are they talking about? How can it possibly go away? So I did a Google search. Is the SAT going away? And the results I found were just absolutely just atrocious. I mean, look at this first one here. The SAT may be abolished. I was like, what are we doing? Are we associating the SAT to slavery? Oh my God, I can't believe this. But there was also posts out there that were sharing that it's discriminatory and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. So anyways, some colleges are going to be dropping SAT, ACT requirements, and some aren't. There's going to be some programs that are going to require them. So it's still a great idea to do the SAT, just on the pure fact that some schools still require the SAT or ACT. And also, and when you're going into like dental programs and PA programs and stuff like that, a lot of those still require SAT. You're not going to get into pre-med or anything like that without SAT scores. Absolutely not. So I put here on my presentation, there's only one test blind school that I know of, University of California, but I believe there are a couple more than that. So that's not really that accurate. And also what I've found in doing my research in this is that the students that submit their SAT and ACT scores get the lion's share of merit-based aid. And that makes sense, right? If no one takes the SAT, no one is special. No one is exceptional academically, right? Everyone's the same. Colleges would love that. because they wouldn't have to issue merit-based aid, right? I mean, if nobody's exceptional, we don't have to award merit-based aid except for maybe competing with other schools. Also, submitting SAT and ACT scores can increase gift aid. So I found this article in my search, and this is from NBC. And what it talks about is the big mistake students are making by not submitting the SAT. And I want to highlight this one section here. I'll read it word for word for you. Despite the university's official test optional policy, the students who submitted their test scores received the lion's share of funding. Another one of my students applied to a large test optional school with an ACT score of 22, and was offered a scholarship of $24,000. After raising that score to 25 and sending his chosen college the new results, his package was increased to $36,000. So that is amazing. Not only did he get a $24,000 scholarship there, but was able to increase his score and got an additional $12,000 in merit-based aid. That is exceptional. And a lot of schools will do that. That also depends on the business model of that school. Okay. So merit-based aid can be awarded in one of three ways. I think competitively, based on a grid. This sounds like it's more based on a grid, which UConn actually offers that, where if you have an SAT score or ACT score of a certain number, you're going to get this. It's public information. There's no surprises with it. And, if you bump up to the next score, you'll get an additional X amount of dollars of aid. So that is great. This is very hopeful. In doing my own financial analysis. So these are some reports that we're able to run for families. We're connected to the College Board's database, and we're able to run projections on need-based grants based on the students' GPA and SAT scores, as well as merit-based aid. So in this top section here, we're applying to Fairfield University, and we're not going to submit a test score here. We could see that we don't get any merit scholarship, although we might get a little merit scholarship in reality because the school will want to compete. And we're expected this in a need-based grant for this family. So that's an exceptional amount of money. In reality, that's the maximum we'll get, not what we'll get. Schools will reserve a good 20-30% of what they're willing to give you and want you to appeal for the rest of it. But what's also speaking to what I was talking earlier is with some of these families, they want to find schools that meet at or near 100% of aid. This is how this works here. So our cost of attendance is between $80,000 a year. Our expected family contribution at this school is $27,000. Our EFC gets split here because in this scenario, I have another student, the second student going to college, and our EFC will get split here. But again, due to the FAFSA Simplification Act, that won't happen unless it gets delayed, which it might. And that creates about $52,000 to $60-something thousand a year in financial need here, especially as that second student enters college. Now, this school meets 85% of need. So they're going to meet 85% of these numbers with either grants or loans or anything like that. And what we know is they meet 98% of that 85% with gift aid, right? That's money we don't have to pay back. And we're not going to get any scholarships because we didn't submit any test stuff. So here's that scenario. Now, in the bottom scenario here, we go ahead and submit our SAT scores, and now we qualify for this merit-based scholarship package, and we get an extra $104,000. So that's a game changer, I feel there. That could definitely be a difference between one school and another. So the question becomes, as the cost of college increases and paying for college becomes more and more burdensome for each of your families there, do you feel that you're properly equipped to help them? Especially not only help them navigate towards a school that's a great academic fit for them, but that's also a financial fit for them. Also, do you have the resources? Do you have the help and support that you need? We know that a lot of you are being stretched thin with your resources. And lastly, do you even view this as, the financial side of this as something that falls within your own responsibility? Do you feel responsible that you should be sharing the true cost of college with your students and their parents? If you do, I do host a How to Pay for College, Smart Money Moves for the College Bound Family, where we dive deep into what drives up that expected family contribution and what families can do to lower it. And for those that are leaving and not able to manipulate their EFC much, we can help them avoid the wrong, applying to the wrong types of schools, hopefully before they fill out the FAFSA. So if you're hosting a college aid night, we'd love to be there and talk. We can do it in an in-person seminar, or we can do it in a webinar format, whatever you guys are rolling with now. We've had a lot of schools that are in person now, so that those are wonderful too. But we're happy to do webinars as well. In addition, we will provide you nice downloadable worksheets and white papers to share with your families on how to on this new approach for paying for college, which is what's the basis of how we go about with our clients to pay for college and lower that cost, as well as having the money talk with your child and how divorced parents pay for college. So we produce a lot of, well, specifically, I produce a lot of this stuff, and it's very great stuff. In addition, we have that college pre-approval worksheet there. This QR code here, if they scan it with their phone, they can schedule a complimentary consultation with me. I'll answer their calls. Not looking to work with them for that. We don't push any specific products or anything. We just want to create an ideal outcome for their student, and that's it. And that way, hopefully, parents can avoid running out of money in retirement, and the school and the student can have an easier start in life. That's what we want. The reality is this: students today are graduating with too much debt, and it's having a profound effect on our economy. They're delaying major life decisions like getting married, buying that first house, starting a family, even pursuing a career field of their choice. A lot of students will drop what they went to college for another job that pays more to pay off these student loans. And I think those are lost opportunities with families. I also have this college preparation checklist here, to help prepare for college, gather your students' GPA, test scores, all that stuff, financial data that's going to be needed, as well as budgeting considerations here. Everyone gets an opportunity to speak with me and ask their questions without getting pitched to or pushed off. We work with anybody, all right? High income families, low income families, people that are in the middle, divorced families, same sex families. We just want to create an ideal outcome for the student. So that's it for my presentation. I hope you enjoyed this replay. And if this is your first time viewing it, I welcome you to schedule a meeting with me too. You can use the same link. You can email me here. You can give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you. We'd love to speak at your school. And I don't think anyone knows this stuff better than me and my colleague, Charles Wareham here. All right. So that's where I'm going to leave you here, guys. Thank you so much. Again, we thank you for the work that you do. We acknowledge it, right? We see it every day and we appreciate it. So thank you so much and enjoy. Bye.